The fantasy football regular season is almost over. A couple weeks left, but the fantasy football playoffs are just around the corner. This episode gets you prepped, primed, and ready in Dynasty fantasy football. If you need to make moves, players to trade for, players to avoid trading for, we're not matched up against you. We're matched up with you to help you guide you through these defensive matchup episode of the Dynasty Six Pack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 39 of the Dynasty Six Pack. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Senra, and joining me is my co-host for tonight, Jamie Perog. Jamie, how are you doing?
It's happy holidays, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in on the holiday season. Welcome to the show where the fantasy points are for winners and takes are for real. And the stats stay for the killers. But everything else is stacked against the frauds, against the clowns, and against anyone still treating projections like gospel. So make sure you stay tuned for the whole show, or we're going to be against you.
So if anyone's keeping count, that was 4 fours and 4 against. So everything is balanced. And yes, of course, offense and defense. Yeah, we focus so much on the offense throughout the season, Jamie. There's no balance there. Yes, IDP formats exist. We really don't talk about them on the show. Maybe that's our fault. Maybe not. But tonight is all about the defensive matchup. So we're looking at fantasy points allowed by defenses at every position, and we're trying to find the outliers. What are the defenses allowing the most points to positions, and then also the defenses allowing the least points to positions, and kind of just inform us on how we should approach the fantasy football playoffs. So there are trade targets to make. Again, sit decisions come into play later. You can double back on this episode when the fantasy football playoffs start. So this is actionable for a long time. And fortunately, Rahul Natarajan, our other co-host, can't join us for this episode, but he'll be back next week. But Jamie and I, it'll be, I guess, matched up one-on-one. Although, again, we're here to work together to help people. Just like we're always here, part of the same fantasy six-pack team, working to help inform everyone about fantasy football. FantasySixPack.net. Great website, lots of great resources and articles. My goal line guide article is actually out a day early this week. It'll already be out by the time this episode's listened to, but at the time of recording, Jamie, you can already check out the goal line guide this week. I know you're excited about that.
I love the goal line guide.
Oh, thank you. Love the Fantasy Six Pack Discord. All sorts of great content happening there. But then there's the All Access membership. Paid membership. The F6P All Access membership can be got, though, at a 15% discount right now if you use the promo code F6PPODS. F6PPODS. I think I will point it out. I've been saying it wrong. Oops. There you go. F6PPODS for, again, 15% discount on the F6P All Access membership. So, I guess we don't really always access a lot of the defensive information, but that's what we're going to try tonight here, Jamie. So, if you don't mind, I'll lead us off right now here.
Yes, let's get into it.
I'm actually going to start with the bad. Well, good from a defensive quality standpoint, bad as a matchup. The Houston Texans defense against quarterbacks have surrendered 12.2 fantasy points per game. That is the fewest in the league, and the second fewest is 13.2 fantasy points per game, a full point more. And it flattens pretty quickly there. There's several teams in the 13 range. Kind of a gap, like where the Texans are really separating themselves as, if there is one, the avoid matchup at quarterback. So their defense is incredible. They've got really good pass rush, which with all that pressure is impacting quarterback quality. Probably a lot of drives ending in sacks, or you're not getting the best quality passes. Can't get those deep targets. Quarterbacks can't throw those like deep touchdowns because the pressure just never allows. The coverage is really good too. So it's not as if the Texans are just a good pressure defense, but it's looks to be kind of a bad matchup there. So there's a few teams to look at in the fantasy playoffs, but anything you want to say quickly about the Texans defense, Jamie?
Let's get into the teams.
Yeah, so again, we'll take the fantasy football playoffs being weeks 15 through 17. And in week 15, it's the Arizona Cardinals, followed by the Las Vegas Raiders in week 16, and then the Los Angeles Chargers in week 17. I really do think that first one, the Cardinals, it's very interesting because of I don't know if he's a streaming quarterback anymore, but Jacoby Brissett. I mean, he's been incredibly consistent fantasy wise, super high floor for his production, and there's a good ceiling there as well. A lot of pass attempts, a lot of pass volume. He might not be the most efficient, but he's out there slinging it. And yeah, so it's people have been. I don't. I'm sure you've been riding a lot of Jacoby Brissett in lineups, Jamie, and it's been a fun ride, right? Starting Brissett the last few weeks.
Oh yeah, and I also love rubbing it in my other co-host's face how good he's doing because I've always been a Jacoby Brissett truther. So this has been a fun ride so far, but as you said, it might be coming to an end during the playoffs.
Well, I think again, he's that guy that's like that, because we're going to talk later about Justin Herbert and what's the level of too high of a quarterback to bench. How good Brissett's been, it almost feels like you can't bench him. And again, this matchup against the Texans in Week 15 will really test that. So, yeah, I guess it's tough to know what to do at this point. I mean, in terms of trade value, the quarterbacks, it's always going to be tough. The super flex trade values, quarterbacks are worth whatever people need them for. If someone needs Brissett right now, they might be willing to give you a second. Although I just thought I saw him move today in a league for a third and a fourth salary league. So again, the draft picks come with that salary. Maybe that ups the value there, but you could effectively say probably a second, but certainly a third plus. You need to buy Brissett because you need quarterback starts to get you to the playoffs. It's certainly good there, but you're hoping to have maybe a different answer and not having to play him once you're in the fantasy playoffs. But some people might need him right now, so it's not to say you have to trade him away if you do need him, or you can't trade for him if you need him. But yeah, it's just that knowing that a lot of teams probably weren't built around Brissett, it might be feasible to find another backup streaming option for that Week 15 matchup. You might have to trade for a quarterback now if there's trade deadlines. Just trade for a quarterback for that matchup and hope they get there healthy and just as a replacement for Brissett. But it does feel like if you get past that Week 15 matchup and you can get to the fantasy semifinals or finals, Brissett could be a quarterback that you can rely on. But if you're relying on him in the first week of the fantasy playoffs against the Texans, that could be something that costs managers matchups.
Yeah. So, would you be willing to like trade Brissett for, let's say you're not in the playoffs and you have Brissett on your roster, someone needs him, and someone's sitting on like a Jalen Milroe? Would you be willing to like do a swap for Milroe's upside in the future for Brissett's like win now?
I guess I'm not convinced that like there's a much better chance that Milroe's a starter next year as opposed to Brissett being a starter next year with how good he's played. So I maybe that's where right now if I were to sell Brissett, I'd want a second round. So I feel like a third for a streaming quarterback makes sense, but I think we're beyond streamer with Brissett. He's going to be the starter the rest of the season, effectively, it looks like. And pretty good fantasy production. Again, we want to avoid this matchup. So if you can't get a second, I'd maybe sell him for Milroe in a third if I'm thinking about that future value. But I don't think I'd do the swap straight up for Milroe. Not at this point. Not with what Brissett's doing as a starter.
Yeah, that's fair. And like I could see Brissett getting another starting job somewhere next season, or even starting for the Cardinals, depending on how Murray's doing. So yeah, that second round price definitely fair.
I think I guess we'll find out about Brissett next year. There's a lot of speculation there, but I think for a starter at least that looks like the rest of the season, a second to me seems fair. I don't know that I'd give up a second for Geno Smith. He's someone you might not like if you're relying on Geno Smith, you're probably not going to make it to the playoffs. So like getting to week 16 and the problem being, Geno Smith's playing the Texans, that doesn't seem like a huge issue. The issue just seems like, man, having to start Geno Smith to get to that point. So that's probably an easy bench. If you can get to week 16, you probably aren't relying on Geno. Like you probably don't even need to worry about benching Geno because he's already on your bench. My thinking. So really, I think the name that's interesting, unless you want to say anything about Geno Smith.
I'm just not a fan of Geno. I mean, he got sacked 10 times last week against the Browns. Just going forward, I don't like his matchups. The team's just not built around him. So I would honestly just get rid of Geno for anything.
Is it? Oh, I guess certainly a second, right? If you can get a second, you're probably out at this point.
Yeah. So for example, if I had Geno in a super flex, I'm almost willing to start like a backup tight end that I have on my roster over a Geno Smith. Like, give me a receiver that's possibly going to get you 15, 20 points rather than Geno.
Well, and I guess it's at that point where, like, can you just trade for Tyrod Taylor, trade for these just like random backup quarterbacks that are popping up and getting starts, and just like patch your way to not have to start Geno, right? Like, even if you're
Oh man,
shifting quarterbacks week
yeah.
to week, I think there's other ways than having to start a backup tight end, for instance. Like, go get Tyrod Taylor. That's probably the better move if you've got Geno Smith.
You could probably get something on top of Tyrod Taylor, Tyrod in a third, getting rid of
Well, I'm just
Geno.
thinking, like, go buy Tyrod for a third straight up. Like, you don't even have to sell Geno, right? Like, just have Geno
Yeah,
like buried on your bench. But to your point, if you could sell Geno for Tyrod, that would be really, yeah, exactly. Tyrod in a third, like that kind of gives the second equivalent if you get enough starts out of Tyrod the rest of the season. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and even like someone like a Mac Jones. Give me a Mac Jones over a Geno Smith. Yeah, 'cause, like, he is younger. He does have a shot to be a starter somewhere. I think he's only 27, 28. And what if Purdy does go down again? Mac Jones is a better starter than a Geno Smith. So I'd rather
Yeah,
have him.
sure.
Yeah,
That's fair.
like,
Yeah.
give me the shot on a Mac Jones, just getting Geno off my roster. Like I said, I'll start my second tight end, my fourth running back, or fourth receiver.
Well, looking at my goal line guide this week, like, I don't think it's an awful week for Kirk Cousins. So can you flip Geno Smith for Kirk Cousins in the third, and then your Penix probably comes back or whatever? Or I guess no, it's London that's coming back. Penix out for the season. So again, with Cousins, you can against that same principle where you get starts out of him the rest of the season, even though he's the backup and not the starter. Is really different than Geno at this point. But if you can get a plus on top. And maybe everyone hates Geno Smith to the point where all these trades we suggested can't happen because no one wants to trade for Geno Smith. Like, his
Yeah.
value might be so tanked that, like, Tyrod in the third isn't getting happy. You might have to get Tyrod in a fourth, Cousins in a fourth. Like, maybe that's still worth it at this point because you're happier with what you're getting out of Tyrod or Cousins. So yeah, maybe the move for Geno. Maybe you want to move on from Geno, but we'll certainly move on from Geno because Justin Herbert, I think, is the most interesting name. If you get to the championship week with Justin Herbert, and then you have the Texans defense that final week. He's someone, like, unlike Brissett, where you probably don't have a backup plan for Herbert. Your team is built around starting Herbert probably most weeks. So that'll take the. Can you? I mean, if trade deadlines don't exist, can you trade for another quarterback that week, even if it's just a spot starter backup, just to not play Herbert? Like, that's where the discipline might happen. Which, like, Jamie, if you're faced with that, having to play, like, the thought of playing Herbert in a championship game against the Texans defense, can you pull the trigger on Herbert in a sense, or do you have the confidence to bench him in that situation?
I think Herbert has enough talent. I think he'll be fine. He'll probably score above the average, which is what, 12 point. Hold on, I didn't see it, but 12.2.
12.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Herbert's week of play them, you probably expect him to score more than that, certainly.
Yeah.
But
I just still see 16, 17 points out of Herbert that week, just as his floor. Like, he's not going to go off for 20 plus probably. But yeah, no, I'm still comfortable starting Herbert, where he's just a set it and forget it type of guy. I don't care about the matchup. I'm going to start him either way.
yeah, I think that was he's the line, right? Like, I think Brissett, you can, again, even though honestly lately the way Brissett's been playing, he's producing like a set and forget guy. We don't have that perception of him because he hasn't been a starter the whole season, right? Like, so we'll find other ways to not have to play Brissett, but like Herbert, again, he was probably your first round startup pick, maybe second round startup pick, maybe it's a big trade you made, or if it's league long enough, maybe a rookie draft pick back in the day, and maybe that's the best value you got out of him. But still, part of the plan is probably Herbert starting most weeks. So that's the tricky one. And I don't think you want to, like, see this and overreact and say, "Gotta sell Herbert," because of something I'm about to share in terms of information, right? But, like, I mean, what even is the price on Herbert right now? Like, even in spite of this Texans matchup in Week 17, is he still someone you maybe want to buy if he's available?
I would buy Herbert all day. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. He's my top 7 quarterbacks for Dynasty. I don't see how you could have him any farther down, unless you're. Yeah, I don't
I'm
even
gonna check
know
my
who.
rankings right now. I think 7 or 8 is probably where I have him. So yeah.
Yeah, depending if you have Burrow above him or not, he's definitely got to be 7 or 8.
I have him at 8 with Burrow right behind him. So, but yeah,
But yeah, I mean,
those quarterbacks in Dynasty, whether it's Burrow or Herbert, if you can get them, you want to buy them. If there's any kind of
so I mean,
reduction in price.
even with Houston, like they are on like the above side of allowing points to slot receivers. It's close to 11 points per week to slot receivers. I think the outside wide receivers are probably around like 14, 15. But I can just see Herbert leaning on McConkey all game.
And when they want to
Just
move
feeding
McConkey
him
outside,
the
he
ball.
still gets Keenan Allen in the slot, right? Like it's going to be
Yeah.
something where it's it's a position that they naturally target anyway in the offense. So it's certainly if it's set up to beat the Texans, yeah, we're not worried about Herbert. I certainly don't think you want to sell him based off this because of the next thing you're about to say, Jamie. Are you ready to flip to the next defense? Because we're talking about again, this is the Texans being the lowest fantasy points or the fewest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. You want to flip to the defense that allows the most points.
Yeah, let's get into it.
It's the Dallas Cowboys surrendering even like more than double what the Texans are. 24.8 fantasy points to quarterbacks. And there is a bit of a gap here. Second and third place actually are tied at 21.3 fantasy points per game. That is 3.5 points less than the Cowboys. So this is a wide margin, much larger than the Texans are from like the second and third least defenses. So the Cowboys by far allowing tons of points. And I think part of it's the defense, part of it's their own offense, though. This is a high scoring offense that forces opposing teams to have to keep up. And so a lot of points scored, a lot of quarterback production. One of the teams in the fantasy playoffs are the Los Angeles Chargers. They play the Cowboys week 16. So you don't want to just, okay, Herbert's got a bad matchup week 17, not overreact to that because he has an amazing matchup in week 16. So he is someone that probably will be getting a lot of teams to fantasy championships. I think that's why the discussion of what to do with him in week 17 will be so important as a continued conversation because based on this matchup against the Cowboys, if you get that first round bye with Justin Herbert, you really like your chance, at least with him, to score super well again against this Cowboys defense going in week 16. So yeah, back to just to continue the Herbert conversation as a crossover from one defense to the other. There's a reason we both value him as top 10 quarterback in Dynasty, and someone your teams might feasibly get the championships with because of this matchup and because of Herbert's good himself, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're playing against the Cowboys, they're averaging what 24.8. You said.
Yeah,
That like
that's
I'm
higher
saying,
than Herbert's average right now. By the way,
yeah,
that's
like if I'm
several points
saying,
higher.
if I think Herbert can get like 5 more points against Houston's elite defense, give me like 10 more points against Dallas. So that's like a 35-point game right there that Herbert's going to help you get into the championship that week.
Makes sense. Yeah, but the math lines up certainly for Herbert to do well. Now, again, it's not they play the Cowboys automatically start because this one's gross, JD. Week 15, the Cowboys play the Minnesota Vikings. And then week 17, it'll be the Washington Commanders. With the Vikings, I mean, is that JJ McCarthy? Is that Max Brosmer? That might not be a good enough quarterback to take advantage, right? So that's like, you're not, I mean, I think there's limits to who you'll start. And I think if you, even in that week, let's say McCarthy clears concussion protocol by the time week 15 hits, he's good to go. It's going to be tough to have any confidence to start him in a fantasy football playoff, even if it is against the Cowboys.
Yeah, especially in the first week. I don't know if I'd be able to trust him. Oh, man, that's a tough one. It's going to be a rough road for JJ McCarthy going forward. I mean, that team is built around like a win now situation, but they got a rebuild quarterback. So I don't know what they're going to do. I would look to sell McCarthy to like someone that's an actual believer in him, like I used to be in the offseason. there could
I
be
mean, we
guys
hadn't
that,
seen him fail, right? Like it's the Trey Lance all over again, right? Trey Lance's value after not starting maintained, and he was still the high. He was probably the highest ranked dynasty over Lawrence and Fields and Wilson because we saw those guys play bad, but we never saw Lawrence fail. It was the same thing with McCarthy, right? So
yeah. So I mean, would you trade JJ for Lawrence straight up?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I don't. I have
Um,
a feeling that. I mean, Lawrence is playing like he's not playing amazing, but I don't think he's playing bad enough that that's a trade that's probably likely to happen. Now it's.
uh,
I mean, I
so
actually the better question is what are you adding to McCarthy to get Trevor Lawrence? Because I feel like that's
uh,
maybe more where that discussion
no,
has to go.
nothing. I have them valued back to back in my top 20.
Really?
Yeah, just because of the future of McCarthy, I think if he finds the rhythm, he's going to get going. And like right now, I have him at 19.
Yeah,
Preseason, I
I
think I
guess
have him
okay. I
like
guess that's pretty close to where I have Lawrence. I guess that makes a little sense. I've got McCarthy at 26 right
okay, so you're lower on him. I mean, trying to think back when we did our first episodes in the preseason, I think I had McCarthy around like 16, 17. So I only lowered him a few spots just because of how bad he has been playing.
See, I don't think I had him in the top 20 just because it was the unknown. And I was afraid to invest in that. So I also haven't really lowered him that many spots either. So to your point, we shouldn't necessarily be overreacting just because it's been bad. But I mean, he's had 6 career starts, so we shouldn't expect it to be amazing at this point either. I mean, again, Kevin O'Connell, Vikings offense, those weapons, but there's still limits to everything. And again, which is back to the point, you're probably not going to still trust McCarthy in this matchup against the Cowboys if you do have him. And in fact, can with that matchup on the horizon, is that the kind of hype that you could use to sell McCarthy? You probably have to wait till he clears concussion and comes back as a starter, and ooh, maybe that's not even happening. I guess it's the sell opportunity on Max Brosmer. Sell him for a third if you can, I suppose, right?
I don't think I wouldn't sell him that low. Like, let's say if I was a contender
I
and I
meant
was comfortable.
Brosmer. Like if you have Max Brosmer and you can get a third for him right now, you just do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to sell McCarthy for a third. That does seem extreme. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm selling any quarterback that's a backup position for a third. Like, give me that all day. Like, I was selling Flacco for thirds. But now let me ask you this: so, if you have McCarthy and you're a contender, your quarterbacks are set. So McCarthy's on your bench. Now, would you go and sell him straight up to someone who didn't make the playoffs for an AJ Brown? Or trying to think of who else would be around there. Jameson Williams.
You see that maybe just because the age gap, Williams seems more likely. Like that seems more appealing to
Well, I mean,
me.
you're in a win now situation, so you want to win. You
Oh,
want the
like
most points.
and you're saying make this trade before the playoffs. Like this isn't a postseason
Yeah,
trade.
yeah.
They've been eliminated. You're still going.
So someone's completely
Yeah.
out of the playoffs, and they're
Yeah,
like, and I'm like,
okay. From that perspective, I get why
for
you'd say AJ Brown.
future.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like I like
Yeah.
that AJ Brown straight up for
You
McCarthy and
don't
a
feel
super
like
player.
you're not losing a starter, right? Like you've still got 2 other starters.
Yeah, and
I
then
guess a little scary to think like you might not have a third starter. Like okay, now suddenly I'm having
well,
to find ways, but that's maybe like a next year problem is to find a third quarterback
exactly. Like,
starter.
I'm assuming you still have your first round pick. You can maybe get one next year in a
I
draft.
never
Or
assume anything with that. If you're a contender, you might have by this point already sold it to be a contender, right? So
true. Yeah, yeah. So is there like a running back situation? Would you trade McCarthy for, let's say, Rico Dottle or Kyron Williams if you really need a running back going into the
Aaron
playoffs?
Williams, you know it.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
I mean, I probably would too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like yeah, if you know, it's all about winning championships, right? If you've got that window to win a championship, you need that other starter, and McCarthy's not going to be that starter for you. And yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose it does make
I mean,
sense.
you gotta pay for points, right?
Yeah, and again, if you don't have draft picks to do it, this might be the next best thing. It's the future potential value like a draft pick does. Like that's how McCarthy has to be valued because right now it's tough to value him as a starting quarterback the way he plays so poorly. Now
So
well, the other offense, like again, week 17 is the Commanders. we don't really have to focus much on that because I think we assume Jayden Daniels will be back by that point, but it's so far away we don't actually know who that quarterback's going to be. I suppose we could say the same thing about the Vikings. But is there anything to say about Daniels, who looks like he's approaching a return?
Even if it is Daniels or Mariota, you're probably going to plug and play him. Like Daniels could be a top 5 any given weeks.
Yeah, he's going to be in automatically.
Yeah, Mariota, completely different situation. I would consider him like a top 15, top 20 during those weeks.
I've regularly been ranking him inside the top 20, I think, just normally. So, I think even, top 15, he maybe even getting close to that top 12 just because of the matchup. That could definitely happen. So, if Mariota does start that game, I do think he's a viable starter in championship weeks. That's a weird quarterback to go with if you're a championship, but if he plays the Cowboys, plays the Cowboys. But again, I think if we had to guess right now.
So, we can't gauge this right now with the injuries.
Oh, for sure. Because, Daniels could be healthy, but by that point, they could also be eliminated. Do they throw him out there? I mean, I guess if that was the case, they probably wouldn't even have him come back anyway, right? So, that might not even be the thought process. So, we'll move on. But it's funny how we move on naturally to continue to talk about the Cowboys defense, because maybe this goes hand in hand with what we just said, but the Cowboys allow the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So not only quarterbacks, but also the wide receiver position. So regardless of Mariota Daniels, whoever's the quarterback, does that make both Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin appealing? Again, Deebo's been mostly healthy the whole year. We assume McLaurin will be back for that week 17. Because it's the same 3 teams, right? It's the same defense: Minnesota, Los Angeles Chargers, Washington Commanders. Those are the 3 teams that.
Deebo's interesting. I'm not sure about McLaurin, but Deebo's definitely interesting. I just can't get on the McLaurin train because he hasn't had snap since I can't remember what week he got hurt, 3 or 4, but then he came back and then got hurt again. And he wasn't really putting up many points, if I remember correctly, like 10 at the most.
Yeah, it hasn't been the same production we saw last year from McLaurin, that's for sure, those few games that he had.
Yeah, so I am definitely not trusting McLaurin in my lineup in the fantasy playoffs. I don't care the matchup. I don't care how healthy he's going to be. But Deebo, on the other hand, I just love how they use him. Like the gadget type player, he can get rushes. He, move in the slot, outside, anywhere. So,
and that was
interesting.
And I think we really haven't seen much of them together to really be able to judge yet. But I am leaning that once they're back, that Deebo will still be the higher ranked one for me. Maybe it's just the multiple ways they can use him, not just the catches, but the rushing attempts and touchdown score. He's kind of been that his whole career, whereas McLaurin, he's been that 1 year with Daniels, which is the only year he's played with Daniels. Maybe we could say he still is that, but I suppose to have confidence in having McLaurin to play him, he'll need to have productive games returning. And whether that's, who knows? Apparently he's practicing this week too. So that could be, he could be back this week. They get the Denver Broncos. So it's probably not going to be a productive game for McLaurin this week, but get week 14, where if he does well enough, maybe 1 week isn't enough, but certainly if he can do over week 14, 15, 16, maybe in this, if he can show some production, he'll at least have confidence maybe playing him in week 17 in the championship. But he's going to have to show better than he has been so far this
season. Yeah. I just can't believe Treylon Burks was the actual thing for like half a week, right? I don't remember. I think he got almost 10 points in a week.
Almost 10 points, which isn't even that great, but that's huge for him, right? Sorry, Treylon.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, like that week that he got those points, AJ Brown was nothing. So I remember making a joke about how I can't believe we're at the point where Treylon Burks is better than AJ Brown because that whole trade that they made.
Yeah, the Titans.
If Treylon Burks is playing that week, let's say he's playing what the heck flex, if it's like a start 11, start 12, and you need like a last flex player, that's what I'm saying. Like if you're going against Dallas, why not just throw him in if you're completely desperate?
I mean, I imagine by that point, like, because Noah Brown is apparently back practicing too, so it feels
Oh, I
like
forgot about I forgot about him. My
they're
bad.
gonna have better options than Burks. That's too cute. We're getting too cute.
Mm.
Yeah. Again, I think it'd be tough to trust McLaurin. I think if Mariota's in there too. That's one where you trust in that situation. Maybe you trust Mariota. You could even maybe trust Deebo still, but it would probably take Jayden Daniels being in there and McLaurin playing well to actually be able to trust McLaurin in that final game. Now, so you talked about Lad McConkey, Keenan Allen earlier, so we probably don't have to spend much time, really any time here on them. Justin Jefferson. That's the one I think that's such an interesting discussion because again, we
So far, yeah.
get the Cowboys. Man, I wrote about it in the goal line guide this week, and it's because the Vikings had the lowest passing goal line grade. They play the Seahawks. Like, this seems like the week to bench Jefferson, but also if the quarterback situation doesn't improve, whether it's Brosmer or McCarthy. Is Jefferson just kind of someone you do bench going forward, not just this week against the Seahawks, but like would it? Yeah, probably not. Certainly, a matchup against the Cowboys would be one of those things where even if you, let's say, had been benching him to get to the playoffs, you probably see that and you throw him right back in and hope that whoever's a quarterback could do well enough against this defense.
So you can wait until maybe after this week when he may not have a great game, but going forward, week 14, 15, 16, and 17, he's got great matchups all those weeks. So you can probably go buy him low right now because I've heard people complaining about how bad he is. Um, should I even start Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I'm kind of writing about that in the goal line guide this week. Oh, you
So
can
yeah,
actually bench him this week finally for the first time
so
ever. Didn't think that'd
if
be
you
a
want
thinkable
to,
thought, but it is.
so if you want to wait this one more week, I don't know what your trade deadline is, but after this week, when he doesn't have a good game, I would buy him for that playoff push week 14,
That
15, 16, and 17.
if the buy low window exists, it'd probably open right now. You may as well try and buy him now for it. But
Yeah, you
yeah,
can try to buy him now, but I mean, even one more bad game might even lower his price a little bit.
I was wondering, Jamie. I was almost thinking the opposite. But yeah, I think just having this good matchup, it might be something. You're right. I mean, this is probably the cheapest he's been to acquire since he broke out, like really early in his rookie season. Remember those first couple of weeks where was it Ola BC Johnson? I think was playing ahead
Oh
of
my
him, and
God,
everyone was
yeah.
freaking out. Paying you could easily buy him, and then once he got on the field and was super productive, almost immediately it was okay. His price skyrocketed. This might be the cheapest he's been since that moment. So I guess I actually, you know what? Maybe look at this. Maybe there is encouragement to go buy Justin Jefferson. I mean, you talked about AJ Brown, right? Right now, if you sent AJ Brown in a first, could you get Justin Jefferson?
Ooh, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I want the Jefferson side, 100%. I still
That
look at
still might not
Jefferson.
be like that's like because that would have been tough to do at any point. It's probably still he probably hasn't fallen that far yet. Okay, just because we were talking about AJ Brown earlier is like okay if you uh it probably you probably require a young receiver who like what's a I guess a younger receiver. Ooh, Drake London. You know, you pivot from Drake London to Justin Jefferson. Drake
Well,
London
right
in a
now
second. Drake London. Is it even cost that? Could you do it for Drake London in a third?
man, that's tough. I'd probably go after CeeDee Lamb, maybe CeeDee Lamb in a third for just. Oh no, I don't even want to do that.
So yeah, at this point, if I've got CD Lamb, I think that's the guy I'd rather stick with. Because honestly, Lamb might also be a buy low right now because he's not producing to his full potential. In fact, George Pickens is out producing him fantasy points per game. So if anything like that, again, like the point is the Cowboys defense, but the Cowboys offense certainly has pieces to go by. But yeah, maybe this is the time to try and look to buy Justin Jefferson over these next couple weeks. Maybe that'll be the Thanksgiving gift you get is being able to acquire Justin Jefferson for the first time ever.
so let's say I have Malik Neighbors on my IR
Ooh,
and
yes.
I'm trying to win. So like Malik Neighbors and what would it take? Probably a late second, maybe early third to move up to
Well, yeah, I can go
Jefferson.
back to a trade I made. It cost me Malik Neighbors a first and a second to get Puka Nakua. The way
Yeah.
Jefferson's producing, not to Puka's level this year, I would imagine it costs less than that. But yeah, Neighbors. You see, I'm thinking Neighbors in a first probably definitely gets it done. You might not have to give up a first. Maybe it's something like You give up Neighbors in the first to get Jefferson in a second, so you still get some other draft capital back to make other trades.
Fair. But it just seems
yeah.
how far has Jefferson fell? Like I think we all had him at 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think so. We all had him in that top tier. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right now I think you have to have him at 4 or 5.
I've got him at 6 actually, but
okay, that's fair because
that almost still feels like that's too high. I'll be honest. Like a 6 even still too high, but maybe if that sentiment still exists, maybe it is tougher to buy him than we think it is. Maybe we're downplaying his long-term value and the people who have.
That's a whole McCarthy issue. I think you're putting too much into McCarthy and like not looking at Jefferson's actual talent. But talent lasts forever. Situations change.
I mean, nothing lasts forever. Players don't last forever in the NFL, but certainly the elite talented receivers typically will stay that way their whole careers. The lesser talented players, they're more susceptible to losing the skill sets and the talent, to be honest. But the ultra talented guys, because I mean, Jefferson, like his best skill set to me is still his hands. Like this guy can catch the ball probably better than anyone in the NFL right now. So like if it's all just hands technique, that's going to stay there his whole career. I mean, he's not necessarily like a Xavier Worthy, Tyreek Hill burner down the field. So you think the speed he plays at can probably remain most of his career. So yeah, that's fair.
So let me ask you this. So let's say I offer you Jefferson for JSN and a third. You're going to decline that, right? Because you want JSN.
Absolutely. At this point, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba has gone ahead of Jeff. I think it's the opposite. Yeah. I might sell JSN for Jefferson in a third, but honestly, I think I wouldn't. I think I'd still just, even if the third was on the other side, I think I'd still take Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Well, see, I have JSN one spot higher than Jefferson. So the only reason I'm sending that trade is just to gauge on what that guy is thinking that has JSN and be like, oh, well, he's offering me Jefferson. Heck yeah, I want him. But if it's declined, I would be willing to be like, hey, well, I'll give you Jefferson and my late third for JSN.
Yeah.
And he's going to be thinking, holy crap, you're giving me a third? I'm like, I don't see how he wouldn't accept that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. I think
I wouldn't either, kind of we're talking casuals.
Jefferson in a second. That's where, honestly, if I'm going on a playoff run, I'm not doing that right now because I think JSN is just going to help you win a championship much better than Jefferson will right now, in spite of, again, this great matchup against the Cowboys defense. Yeah, speaking of good matchups,
think of how your league mates value these players.
So again, with everything with McCarthy, this again might be the time to buy Jefferson. If there's been anything actionable to take in this episode, try and buy Justin Jefferson. I suppose that's what we're saying.
Yeah. And if you're going to sell them, don't sell them for anything but JSN.
Puka. I definitely would want Puka. Again, like you said, you had him at wide receiver 4. I've got him at wide receiver 6, so I'll take any of those 5 guys ahead of him. Aside from the Cowboys, there were 2 other defenses. One other defense that stood out as a wide receiver. Pittsburgh Steelers allow 32 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. That's the second most. So that's 1.2 fantasy points behind the Cowboys. The next highest is also 1.2 fantasy points behind them. So it's funny how that gap existed. And then it falls pretty flat. The next few are in that around 30 fantasy point range. So yeah, the Steelers and the Cowboys, those are the 2 allowing tons of fantasy points to wide receivers. For the Steelers, they play the Dolphins week 15, the Lions week 16, and then the Browns week 17. Waddle, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, even Jameson Williams are probably in your lineup. Even if they're playing the Steelers, is there any Cleveland Brown receiver you're playing in championship week, Jamie?
Oh, gosh, no, especially with Shitter Sanders. I don't want anything to do with the Browns, except for tight ends, because I noticed he likes to target the tight ends, even in bad matchups. So we'll talk about those in a minute.
Yeah, well, bad matchups. There's no worse matchup for wide receiver right now than the Denver Broncos defense. And they have surrendered 19.8 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Again, we're talking about the Cowboys at 33.2, the Steelers at 32 points per game, the third highest team at 30.8. Broncos down at 19.8. And the second highest is 21 fantasy points per game. Again, that 1.2 gap. It's funny how that keeps working. It keeps falling into place. So I mean, we know this. The Broncos defense, great. Elite corners, the reigning defensive player of the year at corner in Patrick Surtain. Even though he's been hurt for quite a lot of the year, it doesn't matter. They're still really good defense. So the three teams they play in the fantasy playoffs: the Green Bay Packers week 15, the Jacksonville Jaguars week 16, and the Kansas City Chiefs week 17. We'll spare the whole Packers conversation, Jamie, because that could take forever because of all the different names. But the perception is of people is, man, if there's any excuse you can to not play Packers receivers because you're just questioning who it's going to be. I mean, against the Broncos defense, that's probably is, to be fair, the week to bench all the Packers receivers. So
You
I
would
think
have to.
that's. I don't think even as much as I love some of the I really like some of those Packers receivers a lot more than you do. Certainly Romeo Dubs. I'd be hard pressed to play Dubs that week. So I think the Jaguars are interesting. Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's a huge conversation. We talk about receivers down. I mean, where was he valued before the season and where he is now? And doesn't look like it gets much better again with the Broncos defense. We're in the middle of the fantasy playoffs for them. Did anything to say about Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yeah, if he's completely healthy and he's clicking at that point, I think you have to give him a consideration because the Denver defense to the outside wide receivers, I believe it's 17 points. Am I looking at that right? I know they allow more points to the outside wide receivers than the slot, and that's where Brian Thomas thrives. So he might be able to get you 12, 15 points. So I wouldn't bank on him as your 1, 2, or 3. But if you're throwing him in as a flex, I think he's got a safe floor, I guess, that can maybe get you like 10 to 12 points. Does that sound silly to you?
Well, I do wonder if are the Broncos allowing more points to outside receivers right now just because Surtain's not there? Like, okay, it's they're still a great defense, but they are allowing more on the outside. Whereas if Surtain's back, maybe that number drops a little bit. That'd be my
Yeah, right now it's a 45-55 split, I guess. So
I wonder.
yeah, we
I guess my thinking with Brian Thomas Jr. This isn't someone that's gonna again. His value is probably so low now that you're like your best move is probably to hold him and hope for some price increase, which might not come until next season, frankly. So I think if you have him, you're probably destined to just keep holding him. So it wouldn't be a sell, but I do think you can get away with benching him. Like I think he's done. He's been so. There's been such poor production from him this year that you're probably not afraid to bench him. It's not like he's constantly smashing for fantasy points like huge amounts. The way you're, oh no, I'm going to miss out. So it's probably easy to just bench the Jaguars receivers, and then that includes the new guy, Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington. Although I do wonder once Thomas is back if Parker Washington is just gonna, you're probably just benching him most weeks anyway. But yeah, this feels like it's
yeah. So I mean, I can still see Parker Washington getting some of those slot snaps. We got Strange back; he's going to take away some. But they really don't have a true outside receiver. Jacoby Myers, yeah, but new team, who knows how that's going to happen. But you made a great point. We are comfortable sitting Brian Thomas because if you're making the playoffs, you didn't make it with Brian Thomas in your lineup. So you probably have other viable options to where you can sit him.
now, one team I did want to focus on that Week 17 matchup against the Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, that's going to be tough. Yes.
I don't think you can like Rashee Rice he's smashing to the point where you're afraid to bench him. So he's probably still someone you're starting. Again, especially if does it get better for slot receivers when Surtain's not there? So maybe by week 17 we expect that it'll still be better for Rice. I think he's still too productive to bench. I think Xavier Worthy, that's a guy where heck, I've got him in a couple leagues, and I've maybe not in one league in particular. I don't have enough depth. That's the RSO league I started with, which you said, oh Kyle, I think you're too short on depth. I think you were right there. But in a league with proper depth, I have been benching Xavier Worthy already. So get all the way to the championship game. He's not someone you want to be riding or dying with in the championship game. I don't think. I think you can find other ways to get there without him. So yeah, I think Worthy's a bench. It is in fact is he even a sell based on what we've seen so far with Rice on the field with him?
Depends on the price. I mean, everything's got a price, right? I'm also willing to look at them as a buy at the right price. I don't want to buy them right now at its cost. Give me a discount. Yeah, I'll take the shot on them. But same with selling. Like if I could sell them high, I'll do that. But I'd rather just keep them than selling them at its cost.
Fair enough. I guess that now he's gotten too low in value. If I guess that it would have had to be predictive and said, okay, sell with the worry of Rice coming back, and sell before Rice came back. That would have been the time. So now, that sell window does feel close to that point. So,
and what worries me about what worries me about that game is the weather, because it's going to be late. It's going to be probably snowy, cold, raining. I don't know, but I don't think we want to start wide receivers in those games, especially versus Denver defense.
Yeah. Again, the fewest fantasy points allowed by 2 wide receivers is Denver. The fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs right now, the New England Patriots, they have allowed 13.9 fantasy points per game. For reference sake, the Rams are the second fewest, 14.5 fantasy points per game to running backs. The Lions are third at 14.7. Bit of a gap again, 15.8, and then it kind of follows. It's a lot flatter. So those 3 are the ones where running backs have struggled the most. The Patriots, especially, I think they've got 3 really great running backs they're facing in the fantasy playoffs. Week 15, the Buffalo Bills. Week 16, the Baltimore Ravens. Week 17, the New York Jets. James Cook, Derrick Henry, and Breece Hall. I mean, those are guys that are, all 3 of them seem really difficult to start, but yet they each face the most difficult running back matchup at least one point in the playoffs.
Yeah, out of those names, Breece Hall sticks out the most that I would want to sit, just because of the team situation.
Doesn't he also stand out the most as the one you want to sell the most as well?
Yeah. Yes.
Because this is the final year of his rookie contract. There's so much uncertainty. Now, I've sold Derrick Henry just straight up for a first in a couple leagues already this year. In fact, I did that just last week. So he is, it's probably easier to sell James Cook, but I wonder if can you even get that for Breece Hall? I guess is my question. Can you get a first like you could for Derrick Henry
right now? For Breece Hall, you'd have to. You'd have to be able to get a first for him, or else it wouldn't be worth selling, because we don't know his situation next year. It could get better. We know the talent is there. So Breece Hall, I would still look at him in that top 12, maybe 13, 14 range, depending on if you're win now, rebuild. But even in a rebuild, he's young enough where he'll be 25, where maybe when he's 26, 27, you're looking to win. So, maybe it's a retool. I think that's the word I'm looking for. So if you're in a retool, he could be someone you want to buy.
Yeah, even if you're a rebuilder right now, I suppose if you're a rebuilder thinking you can contend next year, you're just again rebuilding for 1 year.
Yeah, that's a retool,
right? Well, let's say you're the rebuilder, right? As opposed to buying him. Are you willing to hold him right now and thinking, okay, I'm holding him to compete next year? He's not someone you feel like. Whereas if you have Derrick Henry, is next year really going to be better? That's where that one maybe is maybe still the more urgency to sell.
Yeah, no, Derrick Henry is a guy that's just going to either die on your roster, and you just got to cut him when he quits, or you sold him.
I'm selling all my shares of Derrick Henry. I two different shares this year I've sold for first. One
as a
before
contender,
the season.
You don't want to sell him.
Let's say I'm a contender in both those leagues. The one I recently sold, I'm less of a contender. I think I'm in 7th place right now, but not very high in points for. But that other league where I sold him for first, I'm currently the 3 seed. But I still feel like it's an interesting league situation. It's the Speak On It league. They talk about that league a lot on Speak On It. That's moving to Superflex next year. The thought was, let me just get a first for him, and I'm just banking first. I've got 4 first in 26, 3 first in 27. So Ken Walker, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry. I sold all three of them for first this year, and I'm still in third place, which I suppose if you can do both, that's the ideal scenario. I'm competing right now, but I'm setting up my team long term next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you even want to do like a 1-for-1 for Derrick Henry just to get him off your team, I would give up Derrick Henry. Give me Trey Benson. Give me a Breece Hall Tootin.
Well, has there ever been a better transition? I mean, maybe not Tootin, but specifically Benson, Jamie, that is brilliant. Now, and I think maybe the reason you wouldn't want to sell Henry, the positive side of the matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals allow the most fantasy points to running backs. So I mentioned the Patriots, 13.9 fantasy points is the fewest for the position. The Bengals, it's more than double that, 29.4 fantasy points to running backs. Who do they face? I mean, first off, they face the Ravens week 15. So Derrick Henry actually gets both. He gets a good, like the best fantasy playoff matchup in week 15. Then immediately the next week gets the very worst against the Patriots. So that's kind of hilarious with Derrick Henry. But that is a good pivot discussion to where maybe he's not someone you completely avoid. They have the Dolphins in week 16. Achane seems like a no-brainer starter no matter who he's playing. Jamie, they have the Arizona Cardinals week 17, and that means they would probably get Trey Benson. So brilliant that you brought up Trey Benson because that was the next name I wanted to mention here. But I guess actually maybe that's the perfect time. Tell us why we should be buying Trey Benson, and I mean this matchup certainly is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, right now his value is so low because he hasn't been playing. He hasn't played much at all this year. I can't remember exactly how many games he did play.
I think he played some games with Connor, but as the backup. I think he only started one game. His first start was the game he got hurt in. So the very first game after Connor got injured. So he would have been active the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, but as a backup, not doing much.
So I pulled it up now. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 4, he was active. He played 33%, 44%, and that's when Connor was active. I think week 3 was when Connor got hurt. He played 60%, and then week 4 he got 56%, but that was the week he got hurt, I believe.
Okay.
He only hit 10 points once, and then week 4 he got 10.4, 8.1, 8.4, 8.5. So he's consistently getting you those 8 to 10 points, even as a backup. But now as a starter, I think you have to put him at a 65, 70% of the snaps. That's going to give you a 12-point floor. And then, especially now, he's going up against this defense that you mentioned. I think he can smash and be a top 10 that week. Give him 17 to 20 some points.
Well, again, I mean, they're allowing 29 points. And I suppose that's 29 points to entire teams running back. 29.4 points.
You have to give him a floor. So 17 would be his floor.
Well, you're saying you give him 2/3 of the snaps. Is it fair to give him 2/3 of those points?
Yeah. Let's give him 2/3 of those.
That's still very good. That's still, in theory, a top 10 running back. Now, that's
20. Yep.
That's in week 17. If you can get to the championship game, Benson will be a really strong start. I don't know that he's an automatic every week starter, though, in that vein, getting you there. But he's certainly someone, if you have in your back pocket, or if you're a contender without him, and you could acquire him and hold him just to start him week 17, like that might be an ideal situation. Does he cost a second? Is that someone you could just give up a second for and get him?
I would give up any second. I'm even pretty sure I would give up like the 201 for him.
Interesting.
Maybe that's a little expensive. No, wait, it depends if it's super flex or not.
I'm kind of assuming super flex.
Okay, let's assume it's super flex.
Because I would imagine if it's one QB, a single second is probably not enough. Like that's probably what you took Benson with was the 201. So like, now that he is finally the starter, it feels like his value would be higher than that as opposed to lower. But a super flex second, I think you can get it done for that. So if you got a second line around and go buy Trey Benson, and then he might be again an extra boost to your lineup in that championship week when they're playing the Bengals defense. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say you expect it to be a late second, and anything past a 208, 209 would probably equal 1-to-1 with Benson.
Well, and I guess that it just depends, right? Like, does the other manager want Benson for that? I mean, want to sell Benson for that? Like, if they're a rebuilder, you could see why you'd get off a running back. If you're a contender with Benson, but he's not in your lineup, that you might still be able to get him away. Okay, even though I'm a contender, let me just. It's for someone that's a bench player for me. I'm not using them. May as well get a draft pick. And again, maybe if you do, especially in leagues where you don't have a trade deadline, that contending team might think I can use that second to buy someone else. So I would be incentivized to sell Benson for a second. So yeah, it's at least worth taking a shot. Can you get a second for Trey Benson? But again, it's all based on the Bengals defense. So Jamie, I know you're up there in Ohio. I don't. It's a closer distance that you are to them. Is the defense really that bad? Like, objects in mirrors are closer than they appear. Like, bad defenses are always closer than they appear. I don't know. That was a horrible joke. But let us behind the mirror. What do you think of the Cincinnati Bengals defense?
Dumpster fire. I had a conversation with someone at work. Who's worse, the Browns offense or the Bengals defense? I couldn't give them a straight answer. I don't know.
Based on these stats, you might have to say, okay, are the Browns the worst offense in the NFL? And if the answer is no, and like it's not a for sure yes, then you'd have to say the Bengals defense is worse, because they do look like they're the worst defense in the NFL. So
all right, then you just convinced me.
There you go. You can make that argument, Jamie, because it's not only running backs, like you mentioned. What's coming next, because on the Start Sit show on Sunday, you were definitely convincing me of this, and I think you know this to be true. But again, we mentioned the Bengals allowed the most fantasy points to running backs. I'll say it again, it's 29.4 fantasy points. The second highest to running backs are the New York Giants. They allowed 26.5 fantasy points to running backs. That's 2.9 fantasy points more than the Bengals. So that type of gap resembles, in fact, even extends what the Cowboys have in terms of how bad their defense is to wide receivers, certainly to quarterbacks. That one was definitely the most extreme. It's kind of that level at running back. And the Giants are pretty bad too. They're a bit of a gap up. Even the third place team is 23.8 points. So the Bengals, there's only one team within 5 fantasy points allowed to running backs. It's the Giants, who are almost as bad, not quite as bad. The Bengals also allow the most fantasy points to tight ends. And you knew this, right, Jamie? But 19.5 currently. Do you know what the second, and this is half PPR, I'm pretty sure. You know what the second highest fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends are? Again, the Bengals are 19.5.
It's at least 5 points lower.
You are correct. It's 5.4 points lower. 14.1 is the second highest. Like, this is the streaming matchup of all streaming matchups. You play them in the playoffs, play that tight end. And to be fair, the names that we're going to cover are pretty easy. Week 15, yes, it's the same schedule we just mentioned. Week 15, the Ravens. Week 16, the Dolphins, and week 17, the Cardinals. But yeah, Mark Andrews, I mean, he plays the Bengals this week, so he's a must start in that matchup. And maybe with Lamar back, he leans to the must start, but feels like with Andrews, he's playing these Bengals. Those are the weeks that he's definitely a must start. So
yeah, Andrews has those weeks where he's not targeted a lot, but he is used in the red zone. So I could see like a 2-point or a 2-touchdown game from Andrews in the playoffs against Cincinnati that week. I don't expect a lot of yards or catches, but those touchdowns are just gonna explode those points for Andrews. He's gonna be a must start. Let's say he does get 8 targets and he catches 6 of them. I mean, that's gonna put him in tight end 1 territory on the year, especially with the red zone targets that he's gonna get with the touchdowns.
We got to think who gets to play the Bengals twice this year, right? Who gets to go against this defense twice? I mean, it's the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns. And I mean, unfortunately, the Browns offense doesn't do well enough to allow Fannin or Njoku to do that. And the Steelers, there's too many tight ends that not one of them will do that. And the way Likely has been non-existent this year, it does feel like the door is open for Andrews to just dominate those weeks. You're probably right. even if he's been in a struggle year, those 2 weeks alone might spike it enough to redeem it and certainly help fantasy managers win in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, so I'll keep this in a second, but McBride is a must start every week. It doesn't matter the
It
matchup.
doesn't matter in the matchup. But it's funny because we look at week 16, Darren Waller. It almost feels like that's the exact same thing as Andrews, right? Like he's not someone we expect to see a lot of catches or a lot of yards. Darren Waller, and I wrote about this in the goal line guide this week, just in case Waller does make his return here in week 13. He leads the Dolphins in touchdowns inside the 10, receiving touchdowns inside the 10. So, Waddle and even Achane have more red zone targets. He still has more red zone touchdowns. Like he's the guy that has, that's been his whole thing this year is getting those touchdowns with minimal yardage. So it's funny. Everything you just said about Mark Andrews feels like it applies to Darren Waller. Is he even cheaper to acquire than Andrews? Because I think that's the next conversation is what can we buy these guys for? I think Waller could be had very cheaply in Dynasty, right?
Dude, you could probably get Waller for a fourth. Honestly, I'm actually looking at dropping.
I was thinking a third, but it's fine. You know what? You might be right, actually. Maybe it's the hype of now that he's like that. Okay, it looks like he's going to return this week. Feels like when he was just like, okay, we weren't sure when he was coming back. Even as recently as last week, I think a fourth might have done it. Now that the news is that he's coming back, does that up it one round to a third? I think even if it is, it might be worth. Okay, fair enough.
No one needs Waller because he hasn't really played. You haven't put him in your lineup all year. So if you're in the playoffs, you're good without him. I don't think you need to go buy him. But if he's sitting on your IR, let's say he's sitting on your IR and you're not even in a playoff contention, I would sell him for a fourth. Like, give me the 412 for Waller. Because I just want him off.
See, I'm thinking he's a really good buy to get because you can pick the matchups. Like this game against the Bengals, you can kind of earmark this. Okay, if I get to week 16, I'm putting Waller in the lineup. I think not every team will want to do this, of course, right? Like, I mean, if you've got Trey McBride or Brock Bowers, you're never pulling them out of the tight end spot for him. But it's more, okay, Jamie, FBC Dynasty League. I'm first place. I'm up there in points scored. I've got Evan Ingram and Geno Smith at tight end. Like, even I'm thinking, like, do I just trade for Darren Waller in that league cheaply just to add him? Because those guys aren't really giving you that much upside. Those are guys I don't mind benching for. If the matchup works out, week 16, I'll play Waller over Evan Ingram. I'll play Waller over Geno Smith. So if you're a contender who's been contending in spite of tight ends, those are probably the people that need to buy Waller. Again, it's probably not going to cost them very much. I think I'd be willing to pay a third, to be honest. To give me a guy that I can.
Geno Smith, I understand, but Ingram, I just think I would rather play him for the what the heck flex, I guess. Like, but he's in your tight end position. He can go off.
That's the problem.
I kind of have him pretty high.
That's fair. He gets catches, right? He gets targets. Like it hasn't really been spiking, but it's at least getting you catches and getting yards, getting some production. That's maybe why I'm contending with him. But it does feel like, man, get to the fantasy playoffs. I could use that spike week of Waller in week 16.
So for me, maybe man, if you offer me a third for Waller, I'm smashing that all day. Like I said, I'll take a fourth. Because think about it, with those 412s, 410s, whatever it is, that's in early drafts. That's where I was getting Gadsden. So would you rather have Waller or Gadsden? I know you're not going to hit on it every time, but if you're listening to the Dynasty 6-pack, you would have gotten Gadsden with those picks. Yeah, just give me any pick. I don't care. I'll even use that pick just to move up a few spots.
Okay, let's test this right now. You have Darren Waller in that league. I'm sending you a fourth. Let's see if this actually works.
Yeah.
We're gonna do an on-show trade, folks.
Oh. All right. Let me pull this up. You're sending me a trade right now.
Yeah. Darren Waller for Brad's fourth. It's not even my fourth. So where is Brad in the rankings? I mean, he's been in the finals every year, but he's in 9th currently, just outside the playoffs. So looking like an early fourth at that. It's not my own fourth. So say you'll take Darren Waller for a fourth. There it is. I just sent Darren Waller for a fourth. We'll find out later, folks, if that actually gets done.
No, let's work this out right now because you just told me your hand, so I'm gonna counter because you just said you'd give him up for a third, or
I
get
was
him for
wondering
a
if you pay
third.
attention. All right.
So let's see this. See how this played out. He offered me a fourth for Waller, and I countered with my third. No, your own third.
All right. Fair enough. Darren Waller. Here we go.
We'll see. See
Goal
how it
line
goes.
guide. It says it's actually a good matchup this week, so I might even play him this week.
There you go. And I didn't even need to see what I had on my roster because I don't want anything to do with Waller, honestly.
I mean, you've got Aronde Gadsden, naturally, of course. There you go. We just made a trade in the air. So, folks, it's that easy to go buy Darren Waller right now.
Yes. I mean, why
and
not?
You might not even have to send a third like me, who's an idiot. You might even get him for a fourth.
So speaking of trades, so Mark Andrews was offered to me for my late second. At the same time, he offered me Dallas Goedert for my second. I accepted the Dallas Goedert trade over
the way he's
Mark
been going. I feel like, there's again these matchups against the Bengals. You might prefer Andrews, but I think most other weeks you might prefer Goedert. So
I wanted to transition to the next segment.
It's just funny because most weeks, I guess, maybe week 17 wouldn't be one of those, because if you look at the Buffalo Bills, who allow the fewest amount of fantasy points to tight ends, they do play the Eagles week 17. So unfortunately, Dallas Goedert does get the toughest tight end matchup at defense in the championship week 17. But hey, if you get to week 17, that's a problem to deal with in the final week, right? Like Goedert could probably be really useful to get you to the championship game, but he might not be helping you championship.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it because I'm right on that verge of making the playoffs. But I lost Laporta, and I sold Gadsden for a 2027 first in that league. Like 2
just
weeks
to test
prior.
to see if you get one. Good job, because that's a huge spike in value.
So I was like, well, yeah, why not? I do need a tight end. I just lost Laporta. It's going to be a late second. Let's do it. He didn't help me because he got me 5 points last week. I could have played Arroyo that got me 2 points, and I still would have won. So looking at these matchups, I kind of regret not taking Andrews over Goedert for that second rounder.
There, and I guess, okay, well, folks, maybe that's the answer. We see the what's going on here with maybe the guys to target and to acquire. So again, Goedert for a second. So it's funny, we're talking about these tight ends being worth seconds. I mean, other than Waller, of course, worth a third. Clearly, we just demonstrated that. But yeah, Goedert, Andrews. You prefer the matchups with Andrews, but again, does Goedert help you get to the championships? Again, it's an awful matchup in week 17, but Goedert could still be useful to get you to that point. But just, I know you knew the Bengals were the highest defense in terms of points allowed to the position, to tight ends. Did you know the Bills were the fewest?
Yes, I did, because I've been talking about it all season on Going for Two cheat sheet. You do not want to play tight ends versus the Bills because they allow less than 5 points a game. So Kyle, give us the exact number.
Yeah, the Bills surrender 4.4 fantasy points per game to tight ends. The second fewest in the league was 6.3. So again, we compare 4.4 points to tight ends. The Bengals give 19.5 fantasy points per game to the position. So it's just the complete opposites. What happens to the Bengals play the Bills? But yes, so mentioned Dallas Goedert with the Eagles in week 17. Jamie, it's your Browns again. Week 16, Cleveland plays the Bills, so that'd be Harold Fannin and David Njoku. I know you consider them probably the most startable assets, at least from the pass catchers in Cleveland. But I imagine this definitely tested for you, and at this point, they would be guys you're leaving on the bench. Although the way you dislike Shedeur Sanders, you probably just leave them on the bench the rest of the season if he's starting, right?
You have to. I don't mind starting Fannin if you have to, because so what Shedeur likes to do is just dump it off 2 yards downfield. And Fannon's the best guy to do that to because after he catches the ball, he could run it for like 5 to 10 yards. He'll just take off. He could bust out a 40-yard run. So get it in his hands, and then he could produce. So, like, Fannin, I think I would consider starting Fannin if I had to, just because of the situation that the Browns are in. Shador doesn't want to look bad, even though
Okay,
how
so
bad he is, but he just wants to dump it off and let the receivers do what they can do, and then he'll take 2 or 3 shots down the field and see what happens.
okay. So Fannin startable. Maybe that week 16 against the Bills, so that's where it really pushes it, and you look for other options at tight end. If you have Harold Fannin, can you acquire Darren Waller just for that week 16 matchup and then play Fannin most of the rest of the time?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because honestly, as much as I said I would sell Waller, I'd rather start Waller if he's completely healthy with that matchup versus like a Fannin or a Goedert or who's the other guy, Hunter Henry.
Yeah, then that's just the last name we're going to mention, Hunter Henry, because the Patriots play the Bills in week 15. So Hunter Henry, I mean, we just saw it last week. It was a perfect example. He played the Bengals. He snatched. Feeling predictable that when he plays the Bills, it won't go so well. Now, outside of the Bengals game, Henry has really struggled of late. So he might also be someone that it's not just the Bills matchup. You might want to just bench Hunter Henry the rest of the way. Is this the perfect time to sell Hunter Henry coming off that huge game against the Bengals?
Yeah, because he is pretty much the number one safety valve for Drake May. So with people thinking that in their mind, I think you could probably sell him pretty high if they need a tight end.
Okay. I mean, a second? Is a second considered high?
Oh
For
yeah,
Hunter Henry?
like I would sell Hunter Henry for a second.
Or you sell Hunter Henry to pivot to Mark Andrews, right? Like you're switching to another tight end.
Yeah, they're similar in age, right?
Yeah, I guess probably.
I don't have them ages in front of me.
I would imagine Hunter Henry's older. I feel like he's been in the league longer, but
oh yeah, you're right.
But I mean, some players are in the league longer, and like Juju was in the league for like 3 or 4 years, and there were still rookies like older than him coming out every year, even though he'd been in the league like 5 years. So
yeah, Hunter Henry, I have him outside my top 25. He's 31. I would just get rid of him now. Why the hype is real? Because I mean, you got to think people believe in Drake May. There's really no one else in that offense that's consistent like Hunter Henry. So you could just.
By the way, it's a year difference.
Is it only a year?
So Hunter Henry is basically just about to turn 31, and Andrews just turned 30. So
okay, so close in age.
Yeah, basically about a 12-month difference.
But I do have Andrews like 10 spots higher than Hunter Henry.
I'll have to check my Dynasty rankings. I don't think it's quite that extreme. I kind of feel like, the pivot is probably pretty close. Certainly looking like the better matchups for Andrews, though. I've got Andrews 2 spots ahead of Hunter Henry in Dynasty rankings.
So let me ask you this. Say you have let's say you have Hunter Henry on your team, and a contender needs a tight end because they just lost Laporta. Would you sell Hunter Henry for Terrence Ferguson straight up? And be like, hey, I'll give you the win now guy. I'm not in contention, so I'm not going to need.
It's funny, my Dynasty rankings say no, but.
So my Dynasty rankings say yes over Hunter Henry, but no over Andrews.
Yeah, we both have Andrews higher than him.
So I have Terrace Ferguson right in between Andrews at the highest and Hunter Henry at the lowest.
I am looking. I've got Ferguson, Arroyo, Jatavian Sanders, 22, 23, 24. That probably is too low, but it also is based. There's a lot of guys ahead of them, like Andrews and Henry, that are they're producing better. Although I guess again outside of the Bengals game, maybe not the case for Hunter Henry. So maybe that's. I do like Terrace Ferguson. Maybe I do have to revise that in the rankings.
You do love Terrace Ferguson.
Ferguson and Arroyo have been really tough to rank for me because they haven't really done much. They're not the starting tight ends right now on their teams, like some of the other rookies that have come out and immediately been starters. So it's really tough to know like where to gauge them. But in theory, as a rebuilder, yeah, you would prefer to make that trade and maybe
So
do
if you have
rankings change for a rebuilder to a contender too.
let's say you have a Hunter Henry and you're looking to compete, go sell Hunter Henry and get a Brenton Strange.
Sure. Yeah.
Get a Theo Johnson.
Because we talked about it being what matchup was it? It was they play the Broncos, right? The Jaguars do. So like it's a tough wide receiver matchup, but maybe better. Like that week they play the Broncos in week 16. Maybe you're okay playing Brenton Strange that week, knowing that it'll be tougher for the wide receivers.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, I mean, we did quite a lot, Jamie. So went through again the most and least fantasy points allowed to each position. So specialized in those defenses. Funny to see the Cowboys as the team allowing the most to quarterbacks and wide receivers. I suppose those two things make sense. But then the Bengals for tight ends and running backs. Those seem like unrelated facets. They're just really bad at two different things on defense. Whereas the Cowboys, they're kind of bad at one thing and it just affects two positions. So I guess then again, back to the point of why the Bengals are so bad, right? I hope this episode is good for people. I hope it's a good way to prep in terms of training for players before the fantasy playoffs. And again, you can double back to this, and when we get to the start-sit time for fantasy football playoffs, maybe there's some insight to be had here in these episodes.
Yeah, if any questions, just drop them in the YouTube chat, and we'll answer them for you.
Yes, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Yeah, and drop any questions in the comments on the YouTube video, and we will get back to it. You can
go
also
to the go to the Fantasy Six Pack Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Pop it.
Yeah, there you can always ask tons of great questions in there. And again, there's a lot of channels you can get for free, but there's also the premium membership, which gets you access to even more channels. And the Discord gets you access to extra content on the website, extra cheat sheets and exclusive rankings and extra DFS and betting stuff. So again, that all access membership, you can get at a reduced price right now using the promo code F6P Pods. That saves you 15%. So F6P PODS. Again, that's 15% discount for the F6P all access membership. You can also follow us on Twitter. Jamie's at Jamie Perog. I'm at Senra Says. Looking forward to not just having small talk with Rahul, but big time conversations. But you can follow him on Twitter at Small Talk FM. I'll be back next week, of course. Episode 40, Jamie. So yeah, it's a round number. It's a not really big milestone, but there we go. Because as long as if it either has a 6 or a 0 in it, it's key for fantasy six pack. Number joke. There's a number of jokes I could make about numbers, but I'll spare most people. Anything you want to say to the listeners? That's probably better than anything I could say right now.
Yes, I just want to have everyone enjoy your holidays. Have a happy holiday through the Thanksgiving Turkey Day, and let's all eat this week. Not just a ton of turkey, but let's feast on these fantasy points.
I got nothing better to say than that, other than we'll see you all next time on the Dynasty Six Pack.